authenticity is life for me. Being in a space of being inauthentic is death. And I see that now even more so as a doctor. I see how when we are not fully ourselves, as either people who are providing healthcare to others, if we cannot fully be ourselves in the work that we do, we can't fight for the rights to build systems that are taking care of people in the way that they should be.
Mi gente, what's good? Dímelo, dímelo. Welcome to another episode of the Eres podcast, brought to you by Plural. You already know, it's your boy Pavel bringing you another very special episode with another very special guest. As a quick reminder, on this show, our mission is to redefine professionalism. Our research has proven time and time again that most of y'all are faking it at work. So we aim to show you representation of people being their most authentic selves and thriving professionally. That said, every week we have a different guest join us for a very candid conversation around the conflict that they've experienced between professionalism and authenticity. And before getting into the full conversation, let me give you a quick bio on Angel so you have a little bit more context going into the conversation. So Angel Rosario is a native New Yorker from Harlem / Washington Heights who explores his intersectionality identities as a gay, Afro-Dominican, cis-gender doctor who's completing his training as a general surgeon. That's right, y'all, a Dominican surgeon. Coming from a low-income background, Angel often explores race, health, power, privilege, and the socioeconomic disparities that result through this lens. He articulates them through his memoir writing, poetry, health disparity research, and mentorship. Angel believes that a diverse, unapologetically authentic, and culturally humble healthcare workforce working alongside community members is crucial and instrumental to ending race-based medicine. Oof. Now that you know a little bit more about this week's guest, Angel Rosario, let's get into this dope conversation we had with him. All right, so let's just start off where we always do with the word authenticity.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I actually did get authenticity as the word of the year for 2023.
Really?
Yeah, I saw it on
That's
LinkedIn
wild.
the other day.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's a buzzword. Everyone's saying it. What does it mean to you when you hear the word?
Yeah, so to me, it is like a feeling to me. It's like something deep in my core that resonates as truth or not truth. So it feels somewhat intangible and private.
Private.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily is something that has to be externalized. Like I think about RuPaul's Drag Race, and they're like, you know, you're born naked and the rest is drag. And I'm like, I remember hearing that like 10 years ago and being like, you know, that resonates. Everything that is outside that we use as garb, you know, is just one manifestation. But who we are as individuals, our authenticity is so much more deeper than that. It's so in that way it's private. It's also to me very ancestral, generational. And so, you know, even if I am a blank slate and I don't interact with anyone in the world, I still have a history just by my physical presence here.
Yeah.
That comes from my ancestors. So just existing in that way is also a form of authenticity, even if you don't say or do anything.
Right.
So
if you had to pick a few words to describe when you are your most authentic self, like, how do you think you would describe it? Or how do you think people would describe you as your most authentic self?
I think I think a lot of people would say very different things about me. I mean, I'm a doctor and I have rolos on. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a whole range. It's a whole range. So I think different people would describe me in different ways depending on the setting that I'm in.
Okay.
That kind of adds to this idea that there's no truth to it. There is a kind of a existential or spiritual truth to it, but there's not an observable truth necessarily to authenticity. It's just how the relationship of how I externalize or not, whether through my speech or through what I'm wearing, inside of me feels correct or not.
Yeah.
I get that. And it's something you mentioned too around like ancestral, this history of like family. I think family has such an impact on who we are. What do you think were some of the expectations for you growing up on how to show up in the world from family?
I mean,
I'm sure they weren't like. I'm sure they're not happy looking at this video. Looking at you
they're not
with rolos coming outside. Like you walked outside like that.
They're not gonna see this video. Not because I mean, just mommy's gonna be like, ¿Qué tú haces? ¿Qué tú haces con eso puesto? So like, she's gonna be like, ay, eso santísimo. You know, she's gonna be like, what? My dad's not with us anymore. He would have been like, yo no sé qué diablo este muchacho está haciendo, you know? So I think it's interesting because that has also been a development. When I was a little boy, I was very closed off. I think a lot of that had to do with, you know, the identities that now I have and that I claim, particularly around being gay. And, you know, and now something that I absorb for myself is being Black, which I was not raised in that environment. You know, it's not uncommon, you know, in Dominican culture to just deny that aspect in that way.
It's a very nationalistic mindset. Like,
so
Dominicano, that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so as I've gotten older, I think, and claiming these identities, that really, as a young person, as a child, I felt shame for, at least the ones that I understood. So as affirmation grew, I think being able to assert myself in this way has changed drastically as an adult. But as a child, I mean, yo era calladito. I was getting bullied a lot in school
Why were we getting bullied?
Kids being kids, saying, you know, homophobic stuff in middle school. There was also, interestingly, a socioeconomic standpoint of it as well. So I grew up in the projects in Harlem, and, you know, my family arrived from DR, like probably, I was born here within months of them arriving.
Wow.
So we grew up in the projects in Harlem. My dad worked as a superintendent in the kind of like a caretaker X, I think was his title, in the building. And then everything was good. You know, this is the 80s, early 90s. So this is like crack epidemic. You know, gangs were out slashing people's faces. It was dangerous.
Harlem was not a place you went out to.
Exactly. So, you know, my parents tried their best to like cocoon us in there, but you know, I was quote unquote gifted and talented, identified as that. And then when I was in elementary school, they allowed us to take a test to go to middle school outside of the area. So I wound up going to the middle school in the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Where did you go?
I went to this place called Delta Honors. It's MS 54.
Where on the Upper West Side?
Booker T.
Booker T on like 108th or something?
But yeah, and Columbus.
Yeah. I know where's that.
Yeah, so that's where I went. And I was like very uncomfortable. I was like, what is going on?
So when you were taking the test, did you know kind of like what you were being set up for? Like,
nah.
Even the term like gifted and talented, like, do you remember hearing that word and be like, wait, that's me? Like what was that like?
I think they differentiated us. So we were a class. So we were the GNT class.
The GNT class? Okay.
So it just
sounds funny.
So then within this elementary school, it's like, you know, you had the students and then you had the GNT students. And it was pretty much the same students all the way from kindergarten up until 5th grade. So we were close, but we were also identified as quote unquote special. You know what I'm saying?
Or the nerds, if you will.
Exactly. So
and that's interesting because I think at a certain age, being a nerd is like cool, accepted, glorified, right? But at a young age, that may not be the cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Or even like those aren't the cool kids potentially, right?
Yeah.
Like, did you feel any like, I don't want to be part of this? Or like, did you embrace that idea of like, I'm doing well at an early age?
I embraced that idea because of it. The label that we give to children and to people and to things is there is a bias of something being inherently good or inherently bad. And I think when we're looking at a label like gifted and talented, it leans toward a positive,
right.
From a societal standpoint. And so you take that and you take the context within that is my family.
Yeah.
Essentially, my mom having a first grade education, having to pay someone how to, write her name, teach her the alphabet on the plane over from DR.
Wow.
She said she paid someone $20. Then my dad, who had a 7th grade education.
Right.
So you take that and then this label,
Yeah.
and then the family unit and the educational system use it as a positive thing, and it's something to be celebrated. So, my sisters, I had 2 older sisters, they didn't get the chance to go to college. They were teenage moms as well. So at 17, 18 or so, they had their kids. I was an uncle at like 10.
Wow.
Shout out to my family. Shout out to, my nieces who I love. And now my niece has a son, so I'm a grand uncle.
That's wild.
So I think this messaging around who I was, who I represented to my family was a positive one. And I would say from an educational standpoint, an academic standpoint, I never faced, I guess what you would say, bullying because of being smart or being a nerd. It was always focused on, being gay. I don't even know how kids were even understood this concept, or what mannerisms they were picking up.
Right.
But there was that, and then there was then the socioeconomic aspect to go back to that.
Because it's interesting. Like if you weren't, part of G&T. Sounds like an entertainment group or something.
G&T Entertainment.
Yeah. If you weren't part of G&T and you weren't placed in that school, you would potentially be placed in a school with other people that may have been in that same socioeconomic status. But it's because you were placed in that school where you may be now are surrounded by people that aren't in your socioeconomic status, right?
Exactly. So what wound up happening in that elementary school in Harlem, which was literally right across from the street from the projects that I grew up, it was like purely Black and Latino students. Right. And then now we test out of that elementary school, go to this, school where everyone is gifted and talented.
Right.
In the Upper West Side. And you're essentially getting, proximity to a private education in a public system. Right. With people who live in this neighborhood. So, we had this project that I'll never forget. It's like one of those critical defining moments in life that literally has stayed with me from a spiritual standpoint since it happened till now, till my life, this point in my life. We got asked to do a project. We rotated around different people's houses, and I got to this condo from one of the students where one of the students lived.
What do you mean rotated people's houses?
So like we had the school project, and then they were like, it was decided that we would go to different people's houses.
For the project.
To work on this project. So I wind up going to this condo in the Upper West Side of Manhattan and being like, what is going on? This, I didn't even understand and know that people lived like this.
Yeah.
So then, of course, so that was shocking to me.
Yeah.
And then it comes time to go to my house. And we got these kids going up the elevator with, shit in the elevator, piss in the elevator, graffiti all over the walls, going up to, our spot where we lived. And they were just like, where are we? So you have this exchange of differences. I don't know what that experience had on them. Right. I know for me, it was one of the most shocking, horrifying, shame-ridden experiences. And, I've now in my life, I've come to my whole life purpose, honestly, is to grapple with these issues. And that's ultimately, it's that really core story that brought me to where I am today. Everything that I do, I try to focus in on why are things existing in the way that they are, and then how can I bring equity and justice to it. And part of that has been finding the authenticity within myself, finding the power and the strength of the identities that I have, both in the present that my ancestors have in the past, and then how I can use that, plus the privileges that I've now gained, both earned and unearned privileges, right? My unearned privileges are that I'm a man. My unearned privileges are that I'm a cis man. My unearned privileges, those are like my two big ones that I identify with. My earned privileges are now that I'm a doctor, are that I've gotten higher education, I've gotten to go to Ivy League, schools. Those are some examples of, of those identities that I hold. And so to create equity, to create justice is both honoring myself and my ancestors in who we are and anchoring myself in that while creating justice for those identities, for the socioeconomic disparities that exist in our world.
I had a very similar experience. And by the way, that would be such a fascinating study. Like during those, I love how you described it, just like, because it's an exchange, right? And it's not meant to be that. It's just like, hey, we need a place to work on this. And we could just meet at the library every week. But instead, why don't we just so it isn't impacting one specific person, like, let's make it comfortable for everybody. 1 week at your house, 1 week at your house, right? You know what I mean? And like the output of that experience is just a class project. But what if you interviewed every single person in that? Because those conversations never happened. It was like, yo, what was it like for you to bring people over to your house? Or what was it like for you to go to someone else's house? Like at such a young age too, I wonder like what kids pick up on.
Yeah.
Because I went through the same thing, but I also grew up in the projects. It was weird because it was the projects, but it was on the Upper West Side, so it was on 88th Street. So like I was surrounded by like a nice neighborhood, but just one block was just the projects. And I remember having anxiety around bringing people over to my place. And I remember walking with like one of my best friends at the time and like going to the apartment. And then we passed by this really nice building. And I remember telling him, was like, oh, I'm going to move here next year. We had no plans of moving. We couldn't afford that building, right? But it was me trying to like pre-qualify what he was about to walk into. And I was like, oh, this is only temporary.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we had no plans of moving, you know what I mean? And the crazy thing for me, and I don't know if you experienced this, but like once they went upstairs and experienced the hospitality of like my abuela and, my grandpa and my mom, they were like, yo, fuck my place. I want to come to your place every time.
Yeah.
Because my grandma, is the nonstop like hospitality. Is like, oh, you want fruit? You want juice? You want this? Tostone. And I was like, yo, this place is lit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was this really interesting moment for me of like, damn, should I be embarrassed about home? Like people really like coming over here. I don't know. It was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have that same experience?
It was
because a lot of what you were talking about was the anxieties leading up to it, but then you had the actual let's do the project kind of here.
Thank you for taking me back to this space. It's a very like...
eventually I had to tell my grandma, like, stop coming in. Because she was doing too much.
Yeah.
And they were like, nah, don't talk to your grandma like that. Let her come in. I don't know. It was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't... You're like taking me back to... it's almost like I've intellectualized that experience now. As time has gone by, I can like see the impact that it's had in my life. Yeah. But as we're discussing it, I am recalling a memory when we're sitting down and we're on the floor working on this project, and my mom's gives us food. Yeah. And mommy, we didn't let anyone in our house. We didn't let cousins in. We didn't let know what I'm saying. So it was very much like, because mommy would be like, "Tú no te vas a quedar allá. Tú no te vas a quedar en casa ajena." Same. So it was like...
I never slept over anybody's house, yeah.
So the idea, I don't even know how I did this at 10 or 11, however old I was, but the idea of like bringing people over. But I recall that my mom was incredibly gracious. And when I reflect on that experience, she brought me so much pride. So it mirrors, I think, what... Oh, God, now I'm emotional.
What were you so prideful about?
It was prideful in that este nuestro hogar. This is our house, and y'all are coming into our house. Yeah. And we're gonna be hospitable. We're gonna be how anyone would be if someone comes into the home, and the welcoming and even as a little boy, there was shame, but then there was also like pride in my mother. Because these stories that were told around, at least for me, around, my mom having to, to learn how to write essentially on a plane. When she reflects on it, I oftentimes would hear like the shame también in it. And sometimes that was even things that I would induce in some ways. Like, for example, if we had a consent form, right, I would always give it to my dad to sign because he had the quote unquote nicer signature. You know what I'm saying? So the ways in which even my acculturation and the bullying that I was experiencing around my difference manifested in behaviors in how I got home. Nah, I'm going to have my mom sign, my dad signed the form, not my mom.
Yeah.
So what does that then do to my mom, right?
Oh.
So then thinking about that challenge for my mom.
Right.
And then now seeing her being just as kind and just as amazing to me, or rather to, these students who are coming in.
Yeah.
Despite her not, being like, no one comes over to the house. Despite all those things, she was amazing. So there was pride for her. And that's what I saw then. And then I think it's that juxtaposition of the pride in the identity, despite all the generational challenges that we face.
Right.
And the hospitality and the humility, and also the shame of having students there, like that juxtaposition, it almost labeled it as something, it reinforced this idea, something is deeply wrong in like society, and something is not. Something needs to be changed.
Yeah, and I wonder too how much of that experience, just like so many of our experiences, is a story we're making up in our head versus people making us feel shameful. What do you think that mix was for you? Because there were also people, making fun of you, bullying you, that were making you feel shameful as well. But oftentimes, in that class project, my friend didn't tell me anything. That was me telling myself that I should feel shame because of this, because I was just comparing myself.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I recall the faces, so there's a lot that was not said verbally. A lot was nonverbal.
What do they say? It's like you don't remember what they said, but you remember how they made you feel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that is definitely the resonating, thoughts and memories and emotions from that period of time. There it was not, discreet or like tangible.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see it, but no one necessarily said anything.
Yeah.
But all the other bullying was very concrete. We're making fun of you for X reason.
Yeah.
So.
And in those scenarios of bullying, like, how did that impact how you showed up? Because, like, did you change certain mannerisms or how you spoke or how you showed up because you then wanted to start avoiding that treatment?
No.
Interesting.
So I would go home. It was a lot of crying, a lot of depression, a lot of like suicidal thoughts. I mean, we're talking about like middle school years,
Yeah.
A lot of parent-teacher office visits to discuss like how I was emotionally responding to things and what environments could be created for me to make it safer. And then I would go home and honestly, like, watch tons of MTV, like listen to, like this was pop, peak pop era. I would lose myself in like music videos. I would learn Britney Spears dances and just like dance my heart out. I mean, it was whatever I had to do to cope. And I'm glad that I was able to do that. My family did not know how to manage that at all.
Yeah. I'm just imagining going to like parent-teacher conferences and just like, that's tough. It's just like, it's a lot to deal with for you and for them not knowing how to help you in those situations.
Yeah.
I'm imagining too, like, like your mom saying like, nah, I don't really like people in my house, or I don't want you going over there. But in some ways she kind of like made an exception because it was for school.
I don't know what was going on through her head. She probably does not even remember this, at all. But it is an interesting question.
I think like my mom, she's like, oh, if it's for work, like do what you got to do. I'm not going to call you during those hours. Because there's like a lot riding on the line for that education, for that opportunity kind of thing. When you were thinking about career-wise, right, even a little bit after, like you're not going to these G&T schools, or you're not trying to go to Ivy League just to like do nothing with it, right? Like, what were some of your ambitions early on where you were just like, I got to do something with this?
Yeah, I mean, with what exactly?
With all these opportunities that are coming my way.
So I mean those were journeys, man. Those were journeys because after high school I went to University of Buffalo, and that's where I did undergrad. I started in 2004.
Okay.
And then let me see. So by the time I was in high school, I didn't know. I thought I wanted to be an architect.
Really?
So I go into like college and I'm like, let's figure out what's gonna happen.
Why did you want to be an architect?
I really like design. I would like have this, the little marble notebook.
Of course.
I still have mine, funny enough, and I would use Paint, like Microsoft Paint, to draw the houses that I envisioned that I would like when I was older. No. And it was like white picket fence type stuff.
It didn't look like the projects?
Right. But it's like, that's what it was. And I still have those paintings. They're crazy. It's like, the one is from 97.
Bro,
and
so you were dreaming as you were designing.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah. The pictures are like, they're funny. Now they mean something very different to me as I like process power, privilege, money, and my relationship to these things, because then I was coming from a shame-based place. There was, I need to escape the project. That's also why I went to Buffalo. I need to escape the, homophobia that I was facing. I need to escape the shame around, our family being broke.
Yeah.
I need to escape all of these things. And that just led me to a journey that in the process of me trying to escape, I found myself and then came back to the space where I once was.
How did you find yourself?
So, I mean, again, long journey, but what wound up happening is in college, I had the opportunity to go to Uganda. I went to
a study abroad?
It was like a friend of mine was like, hey, there's this organization, they're looking for volunteers to help a small village in Uganda. It's like a 2-month opportunity. And I was like,
I got you.
I was like, let's go. It was during the summer.
Yeah,
so it was between like, I don't know, junior and senior year or something like that. I was like, let's go. So I went, and then it was there that I realized that the poverty that our community was experiencing was no different than the poverty that people in Uganda were experiencing in the village that we were in.
Gotcha.
And so not only that, but then I started seeing that they were dealing with a lot of similar health issues. Not all similar, but somewhat similar.
Okay.
And that's when I was like, wait, espera un segundo. Like, there's a link between the environments that we're living in and whether we're healthy or not. And when I saw that click, it was almost like the things that I saw when I was younger were revealing themselves in people's physical health. And I could see the links across countries.
Got you.
So when I went back got back to the US, back to college, I started seeing it everywhere.
What do you mean?
I started seeing, people who I grew up in the building with, in the projects, like with the swelling from their ankles.
Yeah.
I started seeing the edema. I started seeing the, signs of heart failure. I started seeing high blood pressure. I started seeing all these things. And then that's when I said, I need to learn more about this. I need to learn more about the link. I wound up going to, after college, I came out to my family. That's a whole nother story. And I was like, I didn't want to go back to New York City. It was too dark and gloomy. Buffalo is also the second gloomiest place in the United States. So I was like, I need sun. And I want to explore this idea of what the relationship between health and socioeconomic position is.
Right.
So I did AmeriCorps, which is a domestic volunteer program, kind of like the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
And I moved to Los Angeles, making $12,000 a year on food stamps. And there I found the community of activists. I found of other, like a lot of Chicano activists. I was working for a nonprofit at the time. I was working in childhood obesity in Orange County in the city of Santa Ana. Shout out to Santa Ana. And
someone that works with me lives over there.
Really?
Yeah. He name is Felipe. Shout out to Felipe. He talks about that town all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I
definitely want to visit.
Santa Ana is like,
work out there. Yeah.
Oh man, it's It's nestled in Orange County, which is obviously there's biases around Orange County based off of like the media and all these things, but there's a huge immigrant community there. Not only Latino, but Asian and a whole bunch of people from all different walks of life. But, media focuses on the rich, Laguna Beach, all this stuff. Yeah. But there are
literally made a show about it.
Yeah, exactly.
The OC, right? I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it, but in there's tons of people of color who's like healthcare needs and other issues get pushed under the carpet because they don't want that sort of media attention, negative quote unquote media attention.
Yeah.
But anyways,
that's such an interesting example again of like you wanting to escape a certain environment and literally like leaving. Yeah. Right? Because I don't know, that's just really interesting. It's like first is Buffalo, then it's Los Angeles, and I can't wait to get back to. This is me making up a story, but I'm sure you coming back here also has to do with like you finally accepting, being comfortable, all of those kind of things, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm sure we're gonna get back to that.
Absolutely. What wound up happening? So I got nestled in this community of activism. It was like at that time we were doing work on.
And those are people that look like you.
These are mostly Mexican, okay. Like Chicano.
Yeah.
And I will get into that because I think there's a nuanced difference there that was very important for me to experience.
Yeah.
But, I found this like spirit of people like, nosotros no vamos a defender, like we're proud of who we are and we're going to, dismantle systems of oppression. And that resonated with me like so much. So yo me pegué con ello. I joined Latino Equality Alliance, which at the time was helpful with marriage equality. So I would go out and do some activism work there. También con, that was mostly it. And in my job, I was doing a lot of HIV work. So HIV, highly, political, highly social. Another, sad and obvious example of how socioeconomic background, leads to disease, like the prevalence of, the risk, I would say, of, people living with HIV or, people living with HIV is linked to where the zip codes that they're from, the different other aspects of their identity, whether they're gay or not, LGBTQ, all of these issues that are inherent in some of the struggles that we face. It's no surprise that these things have manifested in our communities. And so I learned a lot about, slogans during the AIDS movement, like silence equals death, Silence equals death means silence is shame. Shame is silence.
Yeah.
Shame is death, right? So, and the opposite of that to me, and, and in my definition of what authenticity is,
right.
Authenticity is life for me. Being in a space of being inauthentic is death. And I see that now even more so as a doctor. I see how when we are not fully ourselves as either people who are providing healthcare to others, if we cannot fully be ourselves in the work that we do, we can't fight for the rights to build systems that are taking care of people in the way that they should be.
Tell me more about that. Like what do you?
I know I'm going on a segue. I'm sorry.
No. It's a really good segue into the work you're doing now as well. Like what do you mean by that? Like in what ways by art? So if you're not authentic, like how does that detrimental to the communities that you're serving or the people you're serving?
Because what happens if you're in a room where a policy is being developed on, bringing in interpreters or who to hire or the research that's being done that drives the treatments that we decide to do on X population or, the timing of those treatments or the timing of those screenings. If you don't have people in the room who feel comfortable enough to be vocal around what we know is disparities that exist in communities of color and that, we have nuanced needs that need to be taken care of. If you have no one advocating at higher levels for, or because they don't feel safe to advocate for those changes to a system, then then those changes never happen.
What are some things early on that you would just like? Because I think a lot of things or systems that are in place are just because like it may have just been in place for years and no one has said anything. Like, what are some things as you were maybe in grad school or like you're working, you're just like, that makes no sense. Like, somebody needs to say something about this.
I mean, a classic good example, which now thankfully the healthcare system is in some areas beginning to address, is like kidney function.
Huh?
Kidney function.
Okay.
So when you go to the doctor and you get your standard set of labs, there is something called GFR, which is a measure of how well your kidney is doing.
Okay.
That, what is normal and what is abnormal, that value, that's the cutoff for that value, is different if you're African American or Black versus if you're not.
Interesting.
So when you look at this idea of race, which is completely a man-made construct.
Sure.
I mean, it exists obviously in skin color changes, but genetically we're, it's not a thing.
Okay.
Because of when these values were first created, very blatant racism at that time, believed that, people who were Black, African American, had more muscle mass. And so because of these differences, different standards needed to be set across the population. So let's say that happened, I don't know exactly when it happened. Let's say it happened 70 years ago.
Okay.
We now fast forward to a time where we're able to now perform kidney transplants. So what happens when the cutoff score for someone who is Black is determined to have a higher kidney function than someone who is not Black? Because of this concept of race, that means that people who are not Black by this criteria might have access to kidney transplants earlier on than those who are not. So that's how we racialize medicine.
Interesting.
That's how medicine and the idea of diagnosing people.
Yeah.
And also from the diagnosis, then you get treatments.
Right.
That's how that becomes racialized. That's how you manifest racism within medicine.
Interesting.
And if no one is catching that, right? If no one's saying, why are we doing this?
Right.
Then it's just gonna keep on going.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get disparities in kidney transplant, which means that more people of color, more Black people are gonna be dying, from not having access to organs, which everyone deserves.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because what we're talking about is like impact on patients. But I think even like I also want to get into the impact of you just like getting the job.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting because I saw pictures of like on your Instagram, you're like in your coat with the Dominican emblem on your white coat and in braids. And I'm just like, I've never seen a doctor that looks like that. Like, did you go to the interviews like that? Like, did it go to a point where you felt comfortable getting that? Did you meet resistance along the way? People being like, cut your hair before you go into, you know what I mean? Like, what was that process like of just getting the job? Yeah, like, what was that like?
Again, it goes back to the elements of, let me continue the last question that we asked as an answer to this question.
Okay.
So I talked about how I was in LA.
Yeah.
In LA, I wound up, being part of this community. At the same time, within a year of me having arrived there, my dad passed away. So I had to make this decision. He passed away from high blood pressure and had a cardiac arrest. So the same things that I was helping patients with in Los Angeles, I didn't even know that my dad had, this health issue going on. So when he passed away, it was a complete shock. He was fine one day and then he was just gone the next. Wow. So at that point, I had to make a decision. Do I stay here? Do I not? Meaning in LA. I wound up staying because my dad was like, oh, mi hijo va a ser doctor. You know how it is. And so, and mind you, this is 2009. I didn't wind up going to medical school in 2015. So because of my financial situation, because I still hadn't taken like the required classes, I was trying to beef up my application. I wasn't ready to apply yet, but I needed to financially ground myself. While all of that was happening, I'm also realizing that I'm obviously Latino, but other people do not view me as Latino.
In Los Angeles.
So I would you know, back then I had my hair buzz. I always had my New York, you know, my Yankee cap on, and I would
The
go
uniform.
to the uniform, the regular like Tim's, like nothing. Like I'm like, what's the problem? And so then I lived in a predominantly Latino community, but I would go into the stores, and I would like talk to them in Spanish. They'd be like, what?
Yeah.
¿Y cómo aprendiste español? And I'm like, mi familia? Like, I was very confused. And they would be like, pero tu familia, ¿dónde aprendieron ellos? And I'm
Like, where did they?
and I'm like, ellos son de República Dominicana. And they're like, ¿y dónde en África es eso?
What?
So then that to me was like, people are like reflecting on me. I don't know if that's the right way to say, in a way that I have never seen before.
Right.
In New York City,
Right.
we're taken for granted, meaning like, you know, oh yeah, that guy's definitely Dominican, easy, you know, and there's this like spectrum that is understood of different backgrounds that people are from.
Yeah.
But because Caribbean culture is so limited on the West Coast, people just didn't know how to place me. They were very confused.
And it was the first time. Was it the first time that you were like, oh, people see me as black?
Yeah. And then it was the first time that I began seeing myself as black.
Interesting.
To take it back to like what I was saying much earlier, right? Like my gay identity, I kind of explored that and learned it while I was in LA, and simultaneously came to a realization that I was also black.
Was LA also a time when you felt comfortable and safe being gay compared to earlier instances?
It was.
But that's an interesting process. That's an interesting point as well of like you escaping and finding comfort in that escape. I keep coming back to this. Like when you come back to New York, that must have been scary, because New York in some ways is associated with the not safeness that you've experienced earlier in your life.
Yeah, but what wound up happening through college and through LA was an affirmation of that identity. So when I would come back to visit New York, I would go off to the gay clubs. At that point, I had come out to my family.
Right.
I had become an adult so much so that a mí no me importaba ya. Like, it was like, I'll do what I need to do, and I'm going to live the life that I need to live, and that's it. Like, if y'all don't like it, that's fine.
But what was that moment where you were just like, fuck it, if y'all don't like it?
I don't know if it was a moment.
It could have been a buildup of moments as well, but yeah, I don't know if there was one that were just like, fuck this, I'm good.
It was the coming out. I actually wrote about it. It's funny. So through Dominican writers, I wrote this short story called Batalla sobre el Sancocho, which is when I came out to my mom and my dad.
Okay.
So I came out to my sisters when I was 16, and they were like, do whatever you want, but don't tell mommy and papi. They're gonna like flip out. Don't tell them until after you graduate from college. So like this validation of that. Then I could, then I could exert an individuality because I would have gained enough respect to say, now I can say those things.
I had a friend that they didn't get that advice, but they told themselves that same advice of, they didn't go to medical school, but he said, I'm gonna tell them when I get my MBA. Because Dominican families, like when you get your diploma, they hang that shit up somewhere, right? So they wanted to feel worthy enough in some ways of like, when I get my MBA, that's when I'm gonna tell them. I'm just saying like,
yeah.
But they got the same advice of like, tell whoever you want, just don't tell. Yeah, man, that's tough.
I think it's a real thing.
Yeah.
What winds up happening in that story is I'm just in my room. I'm maybe like 2 weeks out from graduating from college, and then
undergrad or no?
From undergrad,
okay,
yeah. From undergrad, and then there's a lot of time jumps.
It's all good, man.
So I'm watching TV, and it's like True Life. Remember that documentary show on MTV? And this guy who's like, very anxious about coming out, but like everyone around him is like, we know, but he was like, he was anxious about it.
Yeah.
He did it, and everyone was like, it's good, like we all know. And at that point, I was like, what the hell am I waiting for?
Like, do they know? Yeah.
So I literally got up, and I was like, I'm over it. Because I had been going to like gay, I've been living my gay life, as a college student. And so I was like, I'm just going to tell them.
Yeah.
And so then I walked into the kitchen, and
As
I'm
they're
like,
making sancocho?
as my mom is making sancocho. And then I tell them, and she just loses it. And my dad is like, he like continues eating the sancocho. I'm just like, he's like, whatever, like, which was a surprise to our family. But, you know, I think at that point, it was just like the cat was out of the bag. Like, I came out. And at that point, I was fed up. I was just like, this is like, I am living my life, and the only people who don't know are my parents.
Yeah.
So I think once that happened, it was like I was free. In LA, I then further reinforced that sense of like my queerness, my gayness, and felt safe in that space. I mean, obviously there's still things that happen, and we've seen very unfortunate like deaths, murders recently.
Yeah.
Because of these things, but you know, overall, I feel a lot of gratitude. Fast forward to like the Black identity that I was talking about. Once I did wind up going into medical school, was right around when George Floyd events happened. And given...
That was a real wake-up moment for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously. But
Yeah. I think given my ownership of that identity that I had gained in LA, plus these events happening, I just felt really called. And, you know, that aspect of social justice came back to me within the framework of being in medical school. And that's when I started growing out my hair. I used to have slick back hair that I would blow dry and all that stuff. And once that event happened, I just kept growing my hair. And then it was a fro, and then it was this, and then it was that. So that was 2016.
So this was sort of like while you're taking classes?
This is while I'm taking classes.
Yeah.
I got my nose pierced. Like, I was just like, fuck everything. I was just so upset. And thankfully, because I think different institutions can have the capacity to respond differently in this situation for how I decided to present myself.
Yeah.
Both in classes, both with patients, and with, that was not, no one told me to change how I looked.
No one told you to change?
No one.
Like how you looked was never met with any resistance?
Very little. Very little. I can't even I think people might say something, but no one ever told me you can't look like this. And so
that's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and so
for me it's often people that look like me telling me, because they just want me to be successful.
Yeah.
They want to look out for me, and they don't say like do this, but they're just like you may be better off if you do this.
Yeah.
That's kind of like how it's typically worded.
So this is the interesting piece. Yeah. That didn't happen to me during medical school, just to be clear.
Okay.
It happened to me later.
Oh, okay. So when you're kind of like working and going for these certain opportunities.
Exactly. So what winds up happening is you go and you do your classes, you learn all your classes, how to be a doc, all the anatomy, all the physiology, all the drugs, all the clinical care that you're supposed to do. And then you go into clinical settings, meaning in the hospital or clinics to, help take care of patients and to continue learning from the other senior doctors. But then once you finish medical school, you're technically a doctor, but in order for you to practice, meaning to see patients, you have to go through residency.
Right. You got to put in the hours of like working with patients, et cetera.
Exactly. In your specific medical specialty.
Sure.
I wound up choosing surgery, which on the spectrum is very conservative. And so, yes, I may have had my long hair. Medical school was somewhat of a more protected space. Yeah. But now that I was officially entering the workforce, yes, absolutely.
And you also
I had conversations around people telling me that I should cut my hair, that I should look different, because they didn't think that I would be given opportunities.
And it's interesting too, because you went to medical school in a very, let's call it, liberal part of the world, in California.
I was in San Francisco.
In San Francisco in particular.
Yeah.
So when you're getting this resistance though, you've got to feel an essence of like, there's a lot of pressure on me to get this opportunity, right? Like, how did you react to that resistance? Were you just like, that person's right, let me cut my hair and like do what I got to do to get this certain opportunity?
It was all those years of prior experience. It was the years from when I graduated from high school, which is when I really kind of began to come out. which is 2009, to fast forward to when I'm applying to become a surgeon, which is 2020.
Yeah, it's a long time.
That's 11 years of me learning who I am, of me learning what it looks like to be of service in community, to be along my community, to be grounded by my community. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And to me, and growing out my hair was a further substantiation. It was like a culmination of who I believed myself to be and how I wanted to be in the world. That was a non-negotiable for me. You telling me to manage my physical appearance so that I can gain an opportunity? Absolutely not. I couldn't. Not only that, but when I applied to surgery, literally the first sentence in my personal statement was, as a gay, Afro-Latino, cis-gender man who grew up in the hood, I feel a strong responsibility to take care of my community. Period. We're gonna start there, because I need to put myself out there in that way, because I need to make sure that if you invite me to an interview, you know who you're getting and that I'm going to be supported in my identity and what I'm going to be bringing to the table. So if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I don't want to be a part of it. And I needed to get the validation that I would do that, because that is the whole reason that I'm on this journey. It's not for me. It's so that now I have this privilege and I have, power way more, especially like from where we came from, this whole journey. I have a responsibility to my community. Yeah. That's why I'm here. If you are going to not accept me for that which I'm bringing, I don't want to be here. And furthermore, I don't have to give up those things in order to accomplish that. Being a doctor is just one way to make that happen. Yeah. But you don't have to do that. You could be a community organizer. Yeah. You could work at a nonprofit organization. I already had my master's in public health también that I got from Harvard. So it's like, I could work in public health. Yeah. I could do a whole bunch of stuff. So it's a choice that I'm making.
Yes.
It's a choice that I'm making to engage the work that I want to do in this way, meaning in being a doctor. Yeah. But I'm not held to that. Yeah. I say like Angel Curandero. That's why I put on my Instagram. And it's because our community's ability to heal is not it's not held by positionality. It's not held by being a doctor. It's not held by having to go through these things. Healing happens with us. It happens in our community. And so my ability to heal myself and to create justice in the world, which is what I really feel, I'm called to do, does not require for me to be a doctor. Yeah. So for me, it was easy to put myself out there like that, and in a non-negotiable way.
That's dope, man. And I know we spoke a little bit about the resistance, but I think it's also important to highlight like the times when you're working and your patients look like you. Yeah. And they're just like,
it's so good.
What do they say? They're like, oh, I'm still waiting for the doctor. He's like, no, that's me.
It's funny because there's so many stories. There's a lot of stories.
Even if you want to get into like the times you wear your white coat and don't wear your white, like that's an interesting dynamic as well.
Yeah, I try not to, because again, what we wear, how we look, has implications for how people respond to us. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of biases that are tied to wearing a white coat. And there's a lot of power differential that's put up right when you walk into a room when someone is coming in with a white coat. Mm-hmm. And so I try to eliminate that, because I'm not coming into a room in a I know more than you about your body and about your health. I don't need that white coat to like create that. In fact, I would say that by bringing in that energy probably takes away from actually having a real conversation with patients around like what their health issues are.
Right.
Sometimes people hold back things because they're scared of being judged.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so if that's the case and we're not creating safe spaces for people to be authentic, right? To like patients to be authentic or to share who they are, then we're not really doing a good job of taking care of them because we're missing information.
Yeah.
Right?
It's very similar to like I think a lot of people feel comfortable sharing stories with me here because I'm not a therapist and I'm not like we're having some deep conversations, but I didn't go into it saying like this is going to be a therapy session. Right. Which is like going through your experience. I would imagine it's similar.
Yeah, for sure.
But you say you do have stories of like you walking in and people, oh, I'm just waiting for the doctor.
100%. A lot of them are maybe half and half positive, half negative, because you get your positive bias from that interaction and then you get a negative bias. An example. Let's start with the negative because I'd rather end with the positive.
Yeah. That's fair.
So, negative example, I walk into a room and I'm actually just have scrubs and a scrub cap on. I don't have this thing on.
Okay, yeah, I would hope not, yeah.
So, I'm walking in like that. I got, a scrub cap on, very regular.
Sure.
Even with the badge that says like doctor on it. And I'll go in, I'll be like, hi, introduce myself. And then they're like, we're waiting for the doctor. And I'm like, oh, like I'm one of the doctors helping to take care of you. And then they're like, oh, but you don't look like a doctor.
Like people literally say that.
People have literally said that to me. It's not an uncommon experience for us, especially us people of color and specifically like Black Latino people to walk into a room and be confused for other types of like workers, which obviously nothing, disrespect at all, but it's despite like something that says it, and people like not believing, or like not trusting, and kind of having to. It's even happened to me in public. Sometimes people I'll meet. We went on a trip recently. Someone was like, "Oh, what do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I'm a doctor." They're like, "You're a doctor?"
Right.
And then that's the negative bias. That's where you see what society sees in a way. Right. What society's stereotypes are about how we're supposed to look.
Right. Like, how do you even answer that? Like,
yeah. So
it's like, have you seen the videos online where it's like, oh, you don't look Dominican. Oh, espérate. And he comes back with the fucking, the whole shit. Yeah. That's what it reminds me of. It was like, oh, let me come back with my doctorate. Like, what do you...
Yeah. Exactly.
But you said there's also like positive biases as well.
Yeah, I mean the positive stuff by far. That's what I focus on, and that's why I come to work the way that I do. I'll go in with my cornrows. Thankfully, no one, from a employment standpoint, no one says anything. Can't say that about everywhere else in America. Sure. But for here, no one says anything, and I go into patient rooms, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're a doc!" Like, I've taken care of little kids who are like OD happy. Aww. And there's this one memory that I have
You're
of
like
this
Superman, bro.
It's a mutually powerful exchange because in this situation, a woman was like, "Hey," I finished seeing them, and then she called me back. She's like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that my son said he was very happy to see you because he's never seen a doctor with cornrows or a doctor that looks like him." Oh. And the mom said that to me, and I was just like...
Like, can I record you saying that so I could, whenever I'm depressed, I can listen to that?
Yeah, exactly. And so it substantiates it when families, like the need for it, for being ourselves, coming to work from a healing standpoint, when comments like that are made by families or by patients. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've taken care of Dominican people who are like, "Ay, tú eres igualito a mi hijo." And I'm just like, that's my mom speaking. Yeah. They're being like, people are saying, "We're proud of you." And I'm like, when you hear that, it's like my mom is saying that. It's like my family is saying that. Yeah. And that is, it's bi-directionally healing. Yeah. And we know, like, data shows us that, people enjoy being taken care of by people who are the same background as them. So like racial concordance in the healthcare providers. And, with that said, then brings up the questions of what happens when there is not racial concordance. Mm-hmm. So what skills do we need to develop or train, or what lenses do we need to incorporate in our medical education, in our, process of professionalism, whether you're a doctor, nurse, whatever, so that if you are taking care of someone who is of a different background than you, that you can honor their experiences, honor the differences that exist in a culture, and then also realize that there's a power differential that exists because of differences sometimes, and how we can enter a space with others and create environments where we close that gap between the differences that exist. So
I love that.
yeah, so yeah, I could talk about this forever.
Let's end with this, because I always end with this, right? It's just like, you've gone through this journey and none of us are finished. We're continuing to grow and learn about ourselves. What's the one thing that continues to empower and inspire you to continue being your most authentic self?
That's such a difficult question. I think it's the continued injustices that exist. I think it's that some things have changed, but a lot of things haven't changed since I was a little boy. And so I think that there is a collective fight that I feel like I'm a part of, and it just so happens to be that my role is as a doctor, but I feel a large sense of community more than ever, and a call to fight alongside community to create justice, to bridge the gaps that exist in our world, the same gaps that I felt when I was a little boy. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and I think we're seeing plenty of examples of this recently. So we all got to work together, and that's what inspires me to keep going.
Mi gente, that wraps up another episode of the Quién, Eres podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please do us a favor wherever you are listening, whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, even for those on YouTube. There should be an option to like, share, comment, or leave a rating and review. Your engagement is just going to help us in the algorithms to ensure that as many people as possible are able to listen to these experiences. Because let's be real, that's the only way that we're going to redefine professionalism. Thank you, and see you next time.